The Virginia Horse Industry Board, Southwest Virginia Agricultural Association, and the Virginia Christmas Tree Growers Association are proud sponsors of Virginia farming.
This program's brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Large or small, Virginia farmers work year-round to help put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.
Polaris, offering its hardest working, smoothest riding off-road ATVs, led by the rugged, more powerful Sportsman 850 HO. Hunt, farm, or trail. Polaris has the Sportsman ATV you want at Polaris.com.
Brought to you by Farm Family, Life, Auto, Business, Farm. Steve Morse, fruit grower, distiller, entrepreneur. Another personal story on FarmFamilyPeople.com. Farm Family, the people you know. Hi everybody, welcome to Virginia Farming. I'm Amy Rocher. Today on Ag Insights, we'll meet Kinloch Farms' Kevin Jennings and JJ Dabbs. Kinloch is building a herd of historic Aberdeen Angus, all of which are grass-fed. Then we'll join Mark Viette in the garden to talk about peonies, and we'll have the Ag Calendar and a Minute in the Field video. All this plus the Ag News of the Week on this edition of Virginia Farming. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation and the EPA have reached an agreement to reduce pollution from agriculture practices. This new agreement will create a concentrated animal feeding operation rule to provide additional certainty that the Chesapeake Clean Water Blueprint will achieve its goal of reducing pollution throughout the 64,000-mile Bay region. For Virginia farmers, this means that the EPA will inspect, audit, review permits, and their associated nutrient management plans of animal feeding operations to ensure they comply with the Clean Water Act and effectively meet the pollution reduction goals. If not in compliance, the EPA will take action. The Chesapeake Bay is concerned that some farmers don't follow the nutrient management plans effectively, and for some farmers, they are just a paper exercise. The EPA will use the data they collect to determine whether revisions to national CAFO rules are necessary to reach cleanup goals. Well, on the other side of that coin and on the other side of the bay, a new study confirms that Delaware environmental regulations have been significantly overestimating the poultry industry's nutrient contributions to the bay. An article on delmarvanow.com reported that in Sussex County alone, the estimated 38.5 million pounds of nitrogen from poultry manure every year was about 55% larger than the actual amount. This new study could lead to a revision of the rules that govern how much pollution can reach the bay. Jim Glancy, a professor in the Bioresources Engineering Department at the University of Delaware, discovered this overestimate and has made recommendations to the model previously used to assess the amount of poultry pollution. Well, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack was a featured guest on a recent web forum on food and agriculture issues. The USDA's Patrick O'Leary has the story.
A live internet discussion on the future of food held at the Washington Post in the nation's capital featured a panel of food industry experts, including Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. He told the global audience that America's farmers are aging and that young people have an opportunity in agriculture.
This is an exciting, challenging opportunity to redefine the American economy, to address the serious issues with climate change, to be able to meet the moral responsibility we have to feed people. I think if you make agriculture cool, you're going to attract people to it, and we won't have quite the problem we have with replacing our producers as they age.
Vilsack said it's important to invest in rural America and in science to help farmers meet the challenges of an expanding global population.
In the next 40 years or so, we have to have the same level of productivity and innovation in agriculture as we've had the preceding 10,000 years.
And is that doable?
I believe it is, but it's only doable if we continue to invest in science and in research.
Vilsack said the Farm Bill, which is being debated in Congress, is critical.
One of the hardest things is making sure that every American understands that when the Congress is debating what is commonly referred to as the Farm Bill, it really is a food bill, it's a jobs bill, and it's a farm bill, that every American has a stake in that legislation.
And Vilsack explained why USDA opposes efforts to drastically reduce SNAP benefits for poor Americans.
There are jobs throughout the entire supply chain, and eventually it gets back to the farmer. So when you talk about a $20 billion reduction in SNAP, you're also talking about a $2 to $3 billion reduction in farm income. The better way is to find better employment opportunities for these people. Why aren't we doing a better job at that? If you reduce the SNAP population by 5% by getting a better paying job, you could save $40 billion in 10 years. And you would not have kicked anybody who needs the program out of the program.
In Washington, for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I'm Pat O'Leary.
Thank you, Patrick. Shungway International plans to buy Virginia-based Smithfield Foods to satisfy the growing Chinese hunger for U.S. pork. There is concern about whether or not this agreement would benefit the American consumer, as it may lead to higher prices, not only for independent farmers, but also for consumers. C. Larry Pope, President and Chief Executive Officer of Smithfield, says they do not anticipate any changes in how they do business operationally in the United States and throughout the world. With Smithfield being sold at $4.7 billion, this deal would rank as the largest Chinese takeover of a U.S. company. Well, Virginia Tech has a nationally ranked dairy science program with a top-notch herd. But until recently, students could not drink the milk that those cows produce. Now, thanks to the dairy science program and the university's cafeteria program, they can. The milk from Virginia Tech's research herd has always been sold to state agencies. This new partnership brings some of the milk back for the students to appreciate. With 17,000 students to feed, the milk from the research herd cannot be the only provider of milk, but it adds to the gallons and gallons of milk the dining halls go through each day. The university has similar arrangements to use products from its Meat Science Center and vegetables from its Kentland farm in the dining halls. Well, cattle prices are high everywhere these days, so how does that impact the market for high-performing animals? In this segment, Cindy Campbell explains why tight cattle supplies and increasing quality grades make better cattle worth even more.
When supplies are tight, all feeder cattle are worth more. But does that mean there are no premiums paid for better ones?
The way I look at that is that really the cattle that are of known genetics and known animal health care and practices and management and nutrition become even more valuable to me. And here's why: because in today's marketplace, that 700-pound animal is a much more significant investment for me today than it was when drought conditions, available corn, so on and so forth, were plentiful.
The risk decreases when a feeder has a good idea of how the cattle will perform and grade.
You can actually look at it, and we do, that the tide has turned in such a way that those producers that spend the time and effort to really get the right genetics and manage their herds accordingly have a greater opportunity now for more profitability than perhaps they did when cattle supplies are plentiful.
National quality grading trends have shot up in the last 5 years, and that also begs the need for more of these better cattle.
Cattle that 10 years ago would have really rung the bell today would be average or even below average, and so that just makes the target that much higher and really makes, I think, particularly the cow-calf operator very responsible for decisions that they are making at the ranch level to zero in on some very lofty goals in terms of end product merit.
Beating the average is what it takes to earn more money for your cattle.
I think that unfortunately, the increase in quality that we've seen across our industry in end product merit has simply moved the bar higher. And as a result, that makes us all have to achieve more in order to receive a premium. And that's the only negative that exists in the increase in quality grade and consumer acceptability of our beef product.
Still, the good news on the bottom line is that happier consumers will spend more to support those who keep lifting the bar on beef quality. I'm Cindy Campbell.
Thank you, Cindy. One Virginia farm is lifting that bar on beef quality, just in a different way. Kinloch Farm is restoring the historic Aberdeen Angus breed. That's straight ahead on Ag Insights. Kinloch Farm in the Plains, Virginia has gone back in time to build a new herd using old-style Aberdeen Angus genetics. Joining us today is Kevin Jennings and J.J. Dabbs from Kinloch Farm. Gentlemen, welcome to Virginia Farming.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come today and share Kinloch's story. We sure appreciate the offer.
It's a pretty neat story, and first I want to clarify that you've gone back in time. You're building a herd with bulls that are 50 years old. How does that work?
It's not actually the animals 50 years old, it's genetics that came out of the 1950s. The reason why we went back there is because that is where cattle flourished on grass alone. That style of the 1950s animals really worked on grass. And to be able to go back in time, we were able to find semen stored and frozen in nitrogen tanks for the last 50 years on farmers that have now retired and have moved into retirement. Those folks we've gone back to and asked them for that semen that they have stored. University of Maryland had another stash of semen. We've gotten semen from New Zealand and Scotland and Ireland. The other places to try to find the semen are too numerous to mention, but we certainly started with semen and then bred cattle, and we worked with the embryos to be able to propagate this older bloodline.
So what is the difference between the Angus that we see today and the herd that you're breeding?
The cattle for the last 30, 40, even 50 years have been bred to be fed. They've been bred for the feedlot system. They've been bred not to be grazing animals. Even though they're grazing, even though they're out in the fields grazing, but their offspring are set up to be put in feedlots and fed. We work too hard for our cattle. We are looking for cattle that will be grazing animal that will just thrive on pasture alone, and that we don't have to do the work for them, they do the work for us.
So was that your main intention of going back to try to find this older breed of Angus to ease the job of the farmer?
There's a number of reasons why we went back. One is economics. It's certainly easier for the animal to harvest the food instead of us. The cost of fuel today, looking back to where we were 10 years ago, we were looking at the cost of fuel today being $5 a gallon. It's not quite there, but it has hit that high. So it's certainly the economics of it. It's also the industry that of grass-finished beef has come forth. We are trying to be grass-based genetic providers of genetics that will work in the grass industry. Not so much in the feedlot industry, but in the grass-based industry. So people have gone out of business because it's now costing them too much to start that tractor on the fuel costs of today. It worked in the 70s, it worked in the 80s, but today the input costs are really driving people out of business.
Yeah, but the one thing I wanted to talk about too is the way that these cattle look. They have a different look than most of the Angus, those big, huge, tall Angus that we see today. Tell us a little bit about how they look and what are their dispositions like?
To become efficient, and to become efficient for sustainability, finishing on grass, the large frame cattle just didn't work. They are a bigger framed animal. Some even 5, 6, 7 framed animals, which is in the 60, 70 inch high. It's over my chin. We're going back to more of a hippo type, lower to the ground, lower carriage, if you will, type animal that doesn't have that frame that has to be filled up every day. They're feeding themselves. They're smaller framed animals for sure, but they're
heavy and stocky, aren't they? They just look really
voluminous
sturdy.
Is the word that I come up with. You're not feeding height, you're feeding width and length versus the volume of the animal height-wise. There's not the skeleton structure that you're trying to fill up. They certainly are a different looking animal. We've had people come to the farm and say, our yearling heifers are as big as your 2-year-olds. That is a shock to them. Some go away snickering a little bit, like, this is a smaller animal. And it is. It's a more efficient animal.
Right.
For a grass industry.
And their disposition, we have a picture of you riding one. They seem like they've got great dispositions.
For the grass-finished beef, you want an animal that is going to not be a high-strung animal. You want an easy keeper, an easy fleshing animal, one that will certainly be maternal and take care of the mother, but also one that's not going to come after you and not going to chase you out of the pen. These are very curious animals. You can walk amongst them even with your children and not be too concerned about if they're going to come after you. Their disposition is very soft, they're very soft-tempered, and that's what we didn't expect when we went back to the old style genetics. We did not expect to see the soft-tempered, and that creates a nice, soft, gentle calf, which goes into creating a better beef product.
These cattle are grazing machines, JJ, so tell me a little bit about how you guys feed. What do you do, a rotational?
Yeah, we are setting up a rotational grazing system, more of a holistic grazing approach for our herd. Now, we have the benefits of such an efficient animal that we've developed with our bloodlines. Now we're able to use that as a resource, as a tool to restore some of our soils with proper rotational grazing. And we expect to see, as we develop our program into the future, more diversity in our types of grasses. Moving them also helps with the health benefits of the animals. So yeah, we're trying to improve our grasses as well as the microbial life in the soils. It's all part of what the long-term goal of that fits the Courier farm.
So this type of cattle on this grass finished system, what type of quality is the meat? Are we seeing high marbling? Are we seeing, what kind of flavor are we getting from this?
There's definitely a different flavor on grass-finished beef. Chefs prefer the grass-finished Hamburg. It's more of a robust flavor. It certainly can be done in such a way that it's a sweeter, flavorful meat versus the grain. I was raised on grain-finished cattle, and this is not a gamey flavor. It's certainly a flavor that is being driven by folks for health reasons. It's a flavor that, and the tenderness, the marbling aspect of it, we have had folks are impressed that when we go to slaughter these animals, they would say, this is grain finished. You can't have this kind of marbling on grass, but it's the genetic lines that we're using to get that marbling.
That do that. Now, this genetic line, you guys are not just raising these cattle to sell for beef product. You're also raising them to sell as cattle for other farmers to grow their own herds. This has taken you a while. How long has it taken you to get to this part, and how many heads do you have now of this genetic line of the Aberdeen?
Certainly when you started with embryos and semen, it's taken us a while to get legs built underneath those animals and get those animals in production. We certainly have had a few years to get started, and we don't have the females in place just yet to be selling females. We are selling the bulls. We have sold some semen off these bulls in a production system that we're looking at, which is grass-based. These animals, our goal is to become a seed stock provider for these grass-efficient, proven animals. We are hoping to graze year-round. We haven't done that yet, but we're certainly going in that direction. Changing our forages, changing our genetic lines will help us do that.
It's really interesting. Just looking at the cattle and hearing your stories about it, it's amazing. It's a great undertaking you guys have done, and I applaud you for that. It's definitely wasn't easy, was it?
If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. I tried to finish cattle on grass, or these larger frame animals. It took 30 to 36 months to get animals finished. Once we started going to these older genetics, within 18 to 20 months, they have the weight to go in to the to be harvested. And the larger frames are we just found we're not finishing and not filling up. This is the direction that we've gone to. And tradition tradition is a great aspect for this industry, but it's hard for people to change, and a great catalyst for change is a crisis. And when people just do not have the money to pay that feed bill, they start to look at what can we change in our production system. So we made that change to these smaller frame cattle several years ago, and now we're seeing the benefits of it.
It's tremendous work, and we really appreciate you guys being here to share your story with us and let us educate the public on what's going on. So thank you very much for joining us today.
So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
We'll be right back. For most areas of the Commonwealth, peonies have already come and gone, but Mark Viette has some great tips on growing that fragrant flower. Let's go in the garden.
Peonies love full sun. The leading reason peonies don't bloom for people is they plant them in full sun, and then they plant a couple trees. A few years later, the trees are completely shading peonies. At least give peonies all afternoon day sun from like 12 o'clock in the afternoon through evening. That'll help them bloom better for you. If they don't get enough sun, in addition to not blooming well, they'll flop and fall over in the garden, especially the ones that are double like this. One of my favorite peonies is Gay Peony. It's an anemone type, not fully double like this, so Gay Peony, even in the heavy rains, doesn't fall over. I hate staking plants. It's a lot of waste of time, I think, unless it's a very cherished plant that you have. Peonies have been grown in the U.S. since 1757, so I consider them an heirloom plant or an old-fashioned plant. They'll live for 100, 150 years. Really don't need to do anything. Just cut them down to the ground every fall, probably in August or September. I just trim them right to the ground. Now this is the garden or herbaceous peony. You would also do this with the Ito peonies, which I'll show you, a beautiful yellow one, in just a minute. And the only other thing you might want to do is use them as a cut flower. As a cut flower, you're going to want to find them in bud, where the flowers are just opening. You want to be sure you do not get flowers that are fully open and the petals are just ready to fall out like this. You want to get them when they're smaller. You can cut them in bud and even put them in the refrigerator and keep them for a month later in bloom. The other thing you might want to do is sometimes people leave the little side buds, or before they get to the size of a dime, you can go in and disbud the side buds. But again, you want to make sure when you do that they're smaller and younger than what you're looking at here. There are some peonies here which really haven't even come into bloom yet. Great garden plant. Plant them 3 feet apart from one another. As you see here, they get this big. And the other thing I want you to keep in mind is if you do want to share that heirloom plant with one of your friends, you can dig a portion of this plant, like a quarter of it, in September or October, fill back in the area you dug from the ground, and give your friend that favorite plant so they can enjoy it for another 50 or 100 years. I enjoy growing new plants, and one of the things that really has been great in the garden is a hybrid between the garden peony and the tree peony, which are called Ito peonies. And look at the beautiful yellow flower that we have here. Remember, peonies are long-lived, they're fun, everyone should have them in the garden. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
Taking a look at our ag calendar, the Eastern Regional Junior Angus Classic will be held June 20th through the 23rd at the Rockingham County Fairgrounds. The show features various showmanship categories and a beef skillathon. More information can be found at 2013erjas.com. That does it for our show. Have a great week, everyone. I'm Amy Rocher for Virginia Farming.
This program's brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. From apples to zucchini, Virginia farmers work hard to put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.
Polaris, offering its hardest working, smoothest riding full-size workhorses, including the all-new 60-horsepower Ranger XP 900. Hunt, farm, or trail. Polaris has the full-size Ranger you want at Polaris.com.
Brought to you by Farm Family, Life, Auto, Business, Farm. Jim Gray, farmer's son, agribusiness owner, insurance agent. Another personal story on farmfamilypeople.com. Farm Family, the people you know.